Great. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I feel like I'm a little bit behind enemy lines here, doing to what UMD did to my UVA Cavaliers last night. It was it was painful to watch, but brighter day, and we're here for a really great event and a really great organization. And I'll start with some intros. So just to get going, I'm James Banks. I am the program manager of Founder Forward. We are a 501c3 organization that works with underrepresented founders, namely Black, Latinx, and Indigenous founders. And our whole goal, of course, is to advance their work, amplify their opportunities, and to support not only their initiatives, of course, but communities of color as well. So we began this partnership with CEJA, UMD, and Meta to continue the work, supporting overlooked and underfunded founders. But this partnership is special in that we are supporting founders with missions much larger than startup success. They are using their business models to address environmental racism and the constant environmental harm minority communities experience. Their solutions are innovative and are building bridges to resources that combat the climate crisis and lack of infrastructure in our communities for clean energy, waste management, education, and sustainable farming as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our current cohort, one of us, of course, that are virtual, and our guest speaker as well. So I would introduce them myself, but I'm just going to kick it off to them and go down the line and let them tell you who they are and a little bit about what they do. So we'll start here with Dorothy.
Hi. How's everybody doing today?
How is everyone doing today?
So my name is Dr. Dorothy Nair, and I'm coming to you from Louisiana, and I have a company called Delta Builds, and we're trying to manufacture to eliminate plastic from sugarcane waste, straws, cups. So next year, hopefully, we can have some of our products up in here.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Chris Hahn, and I'm the co-director for research and education at the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. So we work with frontline communities to address their issues using grassroots organizing, research, and capacity building.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Vaughn Barnes. I'm the founder of Kentuckiana Backyard Farms, which was a concept idea that I created from seeing sustainability happen in the island of Jamaica. And I decided that I wanted to bring that feel that I seen there back into my community in Louisville, Kentucky. And I think that this concept is something that could work throughout different communities, urban environments where we all grow and share with each other and use that as a form of commerce.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Gary Harris, and I'm Managing Director for the Center for Sustainable Communities. But also, despite that whooping last night, I'm a proud UVA graduate as well. So go Hoos! I am President and CEO of Sustainability Solutions Group, an institute that consists of two entities, HCS Enterprise, which is energy engineering, policy, research, and education. And again, the Center for Sustainable Communities, which is all about making communities greener, cleaner, healthier, safer, and more climate resilient. And we do that through an equity and environmental justice lens. And based on my background of being a scientist, engineer, activist, advocacy, educator type of person, and we have a broad spectrum look at sustainability, everything from transportation through food, through clean cities and transportation, education, etc. So really glad to be here.
And hi, I'm Reginald Parker, Dr. Reginald Parker, founder and CEO of Optimal Technology Corporation. We do three things. We develop the highest efficiency solar module on the planet, twice that of anything that you buy commercially. Second, we have an intelligent energy management and monitoring solution that goes with that solar panel. And the third is we build systems, one of which we just finished, the largest solar canopy in Bermuda. So not only do we make the technologies, we make the projects and put them in either disadvantaged communities or developing countries.
Great. Awesome. So I'll begin kind of with putting all of these wonderful founders in the hot seat, asking them direct questions. So the first question that we have is, how would you describe your role in moving environmental justice forward and your connection to it in the South, specifically in the Southern Hemisphere? So whoever would want to jump in.
Yeah, we move environmental justice forward in a number of ways. For instance, we created the National Environmental Justice Institute, and from a research and from an engineering and science lens, we brought over seven PhDs, faculty at Atlanta Metropolitan State College there and such. So we're doing the research, we're doing the technical assistance, we're doing the outreach, etc. That's one way in which we're doing it. We've also founded 12 different environmental justice organizations across the Southeast, and also we apply a lens of what we call just science, and that's where we apply, again, science, engineering, technology, and research to environmental justice issues, and with outcomes accordingly and such. A broad smattering of things as well from a science perspective. We work with NASA and getting their data from satellites into communities and such. So environmental justice for us is a daily activity. In which we embrace all of its principles and such, and move it forward in a manner that serves justice for all.
In Kentucky, one of the things that I've been a part of is a lot of grassroots movements. We just got a $250,000 grant to do a food vision about sustainability and how we in the metropolitan area could get food in the neighborhood and do what's right for the community. So we spend a lot of time knocking on doors, canvassing, actually being there with the people to figure out what the problems are, to create solutions. And again, for this food vision, for us to be able to do good, sustainable practices inside Louisville area.
So my role as a scientist that's also in North Carolina, which was the founding of the environmental justice movement, I have this responsibility to continue that legacy of grassroots organizing also in my science. And so we do community science in ways that get people together to collect not just data, but again, a number is worthless if there aren't people backing it up. So any of the research that we do has to be done with and by communities that we work with, because they're the ones who have also the responsibility to take that on to city council, to their local municipalities, to the state, to the federal government, to make push for change. And so we do projects that are different. They're not just about the science, they're about the people. So I run a project called Spidey Sensor, where people use straws. So I'm gonna hit you up later. So actually, we monitor air quality by collecting spider webs, and we're able to measure, in particular, metal contamination, and that's why using a non-metallic apparatus, like I've been using paper straws, but like I said, I'm gonna hit you up. Using that kind of collection device is really simple, affordable, accessible, in a way that it can include all ages in the scientific agenda, because it is a scavenger hunt. People have to go and find webs that exist. People have to learn how to identify the particular types of webs that we're going for. And for instance, the first event that we had this year, my 2-year-old was the first one to find the correct type of web. And so all ages can really get into it and be good at it, because again, all heights, all observation levels can all have a place in that. And that's, I feel like, the spirit of the legacy that started in North Carolina, that there is a place for everyone in this movement. We all have something that we can contribute, and the observations that we all make are important. And those are the things that we have to advance together.
Well, I'm excited. And I'm at the heart of Cancer Alley, in this little parish that is just, off the beaten track, downtrodden. We've got mass incarceration. So if you're looking for Black men, they in prison. So we're the capital of mass incarceration in Louisiana, and cancer and lack of opportunities. So because all these plants come in, people think, wow, finally we get jobs. And then because if people are peeing and a little bit of weed comes out, you don't get the job. So it's like just every single step along the way is to keep people out of employment in this very rural area where I live, which is a plantation country. That's what they call it on old maps. And so to create jobs that are not only green, but that go for people who are, and you're inviting people who are coming out of prison, people who may not have very many skills and didn't graduate high school necessarily, and have a nurturing work environment. That's what Delta Builds is looking to build. But it's been so hard. I mean, speaking of environmental justice, I can tell you, I have never lived someplace in my 57 years of life where I have had to just, be told, no, you can't do something. Today in 2023. So it's been just such a hard road to till the soil or to do anything. So just even being a Black woman-owned business that does something, that operates, is some level of justice, so that people can see that, look, justice lives here too, even in plantation country, cancer alley, sacrifice zones in Louisiana. So it's just really hard.
So I address economic justice through products, through projects, and through programs. And I'm trying to lead it to economic enhancement, workforce development, and at the very last, community empowerment. As an example, last week I had a conference where I specifically brought 40 different BIPOC folks together, whether or not they were in banks, they were community advocates, but a lot of people who do projects, so that the people who are looking to deploy capital within low income and disadvantaged communities had projects, and then the apparatus to make sure that it gets lifted up. So that's a program, right? And in terms of projects, I gave you an example of something I do in Bermuda, but we're doing that now, looking at Black churches, doing 2,000 by Q4 2024. We look at Black churches as kind of like the center of the community. You hit there, and then the impact is felt all throughout. And you can train up a workforce. People can see the carbon reduction right there where they live, right there where they worship. And so for me, environmental justice as an engineer, I'm not a scientist, is about, putting something out there, designing it consciously, building it, and making it make the impact and drive the solutions. Nothing against scientists. It's just that I'm an engineer.
Great. Thank you, Reginald. So our next question, what is the importance of entrepreneurship in environmental justice, and how does that contribute to social impact?
Let's start on this end, this question. So people are hungry, and my business now is strictly to eliminate poverty. The levels of poverty in the community where I live are staggering. People might have a little bit of land, but then they have a trailer typically. So 1/3 of the people in Louisiana live in trailers. And when a hailstorm comes through, or a tornado or a hurricane, you're the most vulnerable. I mean, we saw what happened in Katrina. I was there during Hurricane Ida, and I had never been so scared in my life. So to have security financially is part of economic justice, because then you can have a roof that isn't blown away, and you're not living under a blue tarp after the hurricane hits again and again and again and again and again. So you can have more security. So it's so important, because the people who can't evacuate are the people who are most vulnerable, who are going to be most vulnerable. So it's a vicious cycle that we've got to end and break somewhere, so that we've got some glimmers of hope, and we've got a sunny fund instead of a rainy day all the time. So we've got to create jobs, especially for people who've been left out, left behind, have felony convictions, are sitting in prison because of a weed charge or something that doesn't even make sense anymore. So to bring people into this century and to put people on solid footing and to let, just to see what can be done, because they're still like, oh, Black people, we can't do that. So we've got to bring ourselves into the world in rural Louisiana, where things have not changed much, not since slavery, really. So it's time for some economic development.
Yeah, I'm going to quote Reverend Yearwood for this one, in that we're told so many times that a business plan means death, a death sentence to the communities. And we need entrepreneurship to have a different business model. Our business model is based on oppression. When our business model is based on exploitation of land and people, we are getting these same problems. So in North Carolina, one of the communities that we work with is called a town of West Baden. And Baden was a company town. So it was founded by a corporation, and they built the town, the houses, all that kind of stuff. They put the Black residents and workers on West Baden, the white workers in East Baden. And since that 100-year history, I'm still fighting toxic waste today of decisions that were made 100 years ago. We're still fighting the burdens of toxic waste storage that was in West Baden, the Black side of town, that residents in East Baden did not have to do. People are still dying from cancer of the exposure of toxic waste that they had as workers in that facility today. And they have buried so many people before that. And so to tell me that, at the time when folks in the 70s were taking these jobs, and before that, they were Black middle-class jobs. It meant stability. It meant that they could get health insurance. It meant that they could raise a family. They had to die for that. We need entrepreneurship. We need business. We do not need more death. Show me that you can make money without killing people. That's a business plan that I want. That's the entrepreneurship that we need right now.
Well, now that I got to follow that, if you don't mind, James, could you repeat the question one more time? Not just for me, but for the crowd.
Yeah, of course.
Because I have my answer on what I want to talk about, but man, dang.
So what is the importance of entrepreneurship in the environmental justice movement?
Got you. So to think about Louisville and what Kentuckiana Backyard Farms, the concept, what was slightly different for me in the groups and organizations that I work with is, and I was mentioning this to you, Dorothy, on the bus, we want to use our business model and our business plan more or less as a way to create better commerce for people. So here's an example. I don't know about you all or in the cities that you guys are from, but where I live at, we have community orchards, and we like to encourage through programming people to use the ugly fruit that are in these orchards. You can use these ugly fruit and make jams, jellies, and things like that, and then go back into the marketplace with a product that you could sell, which gives everybody the opportunity to then become an entrepreneur. And a lot of what I say with programming that we're trying to do is encourage people to say, hey, look, you can take said thing or said space, even if it's your porch or your backyard, or if you have the luxury of having your acreage, and turn that into what is an idea for capital. So again, ugly fruit, people that I know that are growing in their houses, they're growing microgreens to be able to sell salads at the farmer's market, but finding a way to take that and make trade. And for those that don't want to trade, then encourage commerce and getting money. But that's just the way that we look at what we want to do in our economy. Great answer for you, but that's where I was going to go with mine.
Concerning this question, we actually wear both hats. So we wear a nonprofit hat and also the for-profit hat as well. That's the entrepreneurship side. But you know what? Entrepreneurship at its essence is about what? It's about innovation. It's about being creative. It's about moving the science and engineering and the research into a product or program, that actually works for people. And last year we did some 90 different programs and projects and activities and events around these themes of environmental justice and also sustainable development as well. Sometimes these nonprofit wins that we have lead to entrepreneurship ventures. And you know what? At the essence of this, it's all about job creation. It's all about economic development. It's all about being part of the supply chain. Example, offshore wind in Virginia and also in Maryland. In Virginia, we're putting in 172 wind turbines, 172 wind turbines. That's clean energy, but at the same time, that's jobs. If you look at that, if you look at the supply chain that's generating $190 billion and such. So economic development is economic justice as well, and we need to find ways to get people into those into those opportunities, both from a job creation perspective as well as from a supply chain perspective. And in Atlanta, we're doing that. In that we created something called breaking barriers. In Atlanta, the wealth disparity is tremendous. On the west side, and we're looking at extreme poverty conditions and such. On the north side and other areas, immense wealth. It is the largest wealth gap in the country. So in Atlanta, we created something called breaking barriers, where we reached over into the west side and actually created a workforce development program built around deconstruction. And that's where we actually take apart a building, and then repurpose and reuse the materials in that building as well and such. And then we took that cohort that we built around breaking barriers and put it on steroids and created something called Rebuild Atlanta, where we went from initial 8 members in our cohort to 20. Now we're up to 40 coalition members, generating all kinds of jobs and such around this clean energy economy. Again, in weatherization and home repairs and energy efficiency and renewable energy and rooftop solar and community scale solar as well. And we're not only creating jobs, but also starting up enterprises as well, because that's economic development, and that's what's going to move that needle, close that gap that we see in Atlanta and elsewhere.
There's very little more to add to all that's been said. Basically, the innovation of entrepreneurship is either a new business model or it's a new product. But the difference is that when you put yourself in there, you now have a different lens in which you're able to solve something. I remember sitting on a call and the guy said, well, your innovation on your solar module doesn't seem too difficult. Why didn't somebody else come up with it? And, it's an offensive question, just to say that straight out. So I answered in the way that my mom would have answered. And I said, they ain't me. and what that means is that if it was so simple, I said to him, you have a PhD in physics. If it was so simple, why didn't you come up with it? Because if you look at your dissertation, you had the skills, but you didn't have the lived experience necessary to be able to solve this. See, when I took my high school picture, it was black. All you could see is my face and my eyes. That was not going to be my high school legacy. And so I had somebody else take the picture who understood how to take pictures of black skin. He was my uncle. And what he did was split the light. He took infrared, the heat, sent it somewhere else, and he shifted the tones to bring out my natural color so that you can see my face much better. I learned that lesson in high school, took it on to undergrad, took it to grad school, and designed a system that not only split light, but enhanced certain portions so that I can have efficiency greater than 43.5%. That was my lived experience, which he didn't have to worry about because the cameras that were taking pictures were designed for him. So sometimes for environmental justice, if you never had to suffer the problem, Why are you coming up with the solution? It just won't happen. And so entrepreneurship is a way in which we can either come up with a new business model or a new product to solve the problem that we're having. I'm going to leave it there.
You left it. Yeah. So fifth and final question, but I may have some teasers for you guys as well. What does the future of this work look like to you, and where do you want to take your efforts?
This future for us looks bright. We're so excited about the new Justice 40 incentives and executive orders and all the federal agencies gearing up to provide not only funding and resources, but direct technical assistance as well. We've been privileged to win thus far 2 Hero X American-made prizes, one having to do with the Community Power Accelerator, Community Scale Solar, another having to do with Community Clean Energy Coalition, the prize as well. But both of those will bring monies and resources, but they also bring coalition building as well. You know, bringing in the residents and bringing in the other agencies and nonprofits get coming together to advance the mission. You know, I am so excited also about the ability to use technology to advance the movement. We've created and we're creating all sorts of applications to help mitigate these environmental justice problems. I talked about workforce development. We've developed an app that will link all these emerging technologies and their potential workforce opportunities with low-income communities. We developed an app where we can go into a community, whether it be in Alabama or South Carolina, and do a risk assessment, a hazard assessment, a capability assessment, a vulnerability assessment, and it spits out an action plan to make that community more resilient. You know, we developed an app to reduce energy burden. We've developed an app and other technology to help identify counties and cities where some of this Justice 40 money should go. So we're excited about all these opportunities, but more so to be able to move the movement in a meaningful way through a just science lens.
I could only follow that up with, we are excited as well. A lot of the things that are happening in Louisville, as far as what excitement is happening, because you sound like you're talking on a larger scale. I like talking from my city lens. We, since getting that grant and running a conference, we literally just had a conference just like this symposium last week that a few of the organizations that work together in what we call FIN, Food in Neighborhoods, we were able to first run the conference, then do so many surveys, put together so much data, and now we're starting to address the data with the solutions that the community came up with. So things from redistributing food to community garden organizing, healthcare clinics that happen at certain areas in the city where people have needs the most. There's just so much stuff that we're growing with in Louisville that I'm proud of, that I've been a part of, that I've watched go from like absolute, gosh, the word that I was coming up with was shit, but it went from like nothing to just so much positive energy and so many good people coming around that as far as moving forward, I'm super excited.
So our organization, the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network, has been around for 25 years. And in that time, we have been defining the movement, defining how we fight. And a lot of our time has been spent fighting corporations and industries that have had a very strong hold in our state and across the country, in some cases the world. They're global institutions. For the future, I'm looking forward to being able to use our power to shape and not just fight what we don't want, but to shape what we do want. And so that's why I'm really excited to be in this panel in particular, because these are people that are shaping, like, this is what we want. This is the type of power that we want to build, because not only is it having these benefits that folks are talking about in terms of, building wealth in our communities and having strategies against climate change and all that, all those important things. It also, the more room we make for this type of work, the less room we're making for toxic industries. It's not enough to just say that what we don't want, because we actually have been doing that for a while, and they just keep getting more power and going around us and making it harder. We have to fill that space with what we need. We need to fill that space with these ideas and with these folks. And so being able to have, I think, the power with Justice 40 to be able to build and have the space and platform to shape more things is really what I'm excited about.
I have spent the past maybe 2 years. So a little bit of background. I lived in South Africa from 1998 until like 2017. Loved it. Raised my three children there, then relocated to home in Louisiana. It has been horrible. I have had 0 wins, 0, nothing. Couldn't get any grants, couldn't get any money. Justice 40, it ain't for me. So I've gotten up off the couch. I had an idea looking at glass recycling in New Orleans, taking it, processing it into sand, and using that for stormwater management, taking some of the glass and making some Mardi Gras beads, because we got Mardi Gras. They spend $500 million a year buying plastic from one factory in China. So it's like, wow, let's make some stuff here locally. We can make beads out of newspapers. We can make beads out of plastic that we already have. We don't have to mine virgin material. Has anything... Somebody stole that idea, by the way, and they ran to the bank with it. White kids. So I was on the couch, couldn't get up, in a depression. And just like, okay, I got a date in mind and I'm going back to Africa, because at least I don't have to apologize for being Black there. So I got a call from this man right over here, James Banks. And it's like, oh, maybe some things can happen in Louisiana, because we are going to eliminate poverty. Hear me well, eliminate poverty. How am I going to get the money to build these factories? I'm going to make that money myself. I have a business that I had called A Loves B. It was a cute clothing label of African inspired attire. I'm putting that back on the market. So I'm going to the Congo in October, and I'm going to sell some products and sell products that are related to the International Decade of Persons of African Descent that ends in 2024. Did you hear about it? Because the United Nations didn't tell people in Louisiana about it. So we're going to celebrate that and get some musical instruments, sell them, puzzles of Africa, and sell them in schools, at the Smithsonian places. What will the money go to? Building that micro factory. And I can tell you, when the EPA comes, when other people come and they turn me down for grants, and after grant, after grant, after grant, after grant, I'm going to have to tell them to kiss me where the sun don't shine. Because when I get kissed, I like to enjoy it. So... And I think you can read those words. So
well,
we got lots on tap.
Aquaba and yay both. Look, what's happening right now is the closest thing that we will get to reparations in our lifetime. IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, if we do our work, and we deploy strategically within low-income and disadvantaged communities, lit communities, we can lift ourselves up higher and use it through the lens of environmental justice. That's the reason I said environmental justice, economic opportunity, workforce development, community empowerment. All of these 4 things are related if we use IRA, I say Aunt Ira and Uncle Bill correctly. So what I see for the future with these fine 4 panelists and myself, with the help of Mr. Banks and everybody in the room, we can actually make tomorrow better than what our forefathers and foremothers thought. We are their wildest dreams. Think about what our progeny are going to be to us. So I am, just enthused about what can be, but we have to be in a room, or else we have to make our own room. And I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you. So we do have time for some questions from the audience. So don't be shy. As you can tell, they're not shy at all. So they will have answers for you.
They gonna talk with you.
Yeah. Don't be shy. Anyone? Any questions? Yes.
Do I need to speak in the mic or can I speak?
We can
We can hear you. Yeah.
Well, the only reason why
Yeah,
I was about to
okay.
say you might want to grab the microphone. Somebody just sent me a text message saying that it's streaming. Right? You got
Oh,
streaming.
yeah. So
Okay. Well, hi, my name is Usley. I'm a PhD student here at the University of Maryland. I study behavioral and community health. And my question for you is, how do you culturally ground any of your work in the culture of the South? Some of the pushback I've received from, I'm from Maryland, but my family is from North Carolina and Alabama. And some of the pushback that sometimes I receive is, some things are just a part of our culture, and they might understand how maybe the tobacco industry, for example, or even something like soul food. Like they understand it's unhealthy, or they understand that they're a product of harmful practices from the tobacco industry or from the sort of consequences of enslavement. But they also are like, well, this is kind of just how we do. So how in your work do you disentangle that and kind of teach, hey, well, this might be a part of our culture, but this is how we can make change and understand how it affects our health? I hope that question makes sense.
Oh, it
Can I
absolutely
start
makes
for
sense.
first one time?
Yeah.
All right. It's already in our culture. Grandma, granddaddy said, close that door. Don't let all that energy out the house. So, we always have been a culture of energy conservation. Don't let folks fool you that it came from somewhere else. It came first from us. If you look at the history of what Africans, Caribbeans, and African Americans have done, it's always been here. This is not something we don't know. When you look, just as a separate thing, the inoculations and vaccines, that came from Africa. When you look at history of technology, a lot of it has come from our roots. So it's not something that we don't do. Just start from that little seed. Did you tell me to turn off the light? Did you tell me to close the refrigerator door? Did you tell me to close the front door? If so, you had energy on your mind and you always had it.
Food, right?
I'm done.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely with food. Since I just skipped the line, I would think that a lot of the stuff as far as like in the South practices that we seen not be healthy for us moving forward were the things that we're stopping. And then the stuff that we know that's working, that were practices, we continue to double down on that. So I don't have a good example like close the door and close the fridge because, man, he just stole everything from me. A matter of fact, now you said with food, you know what, you're right. A lot of what we do in the ag space that I've always encouraged, just even with my friends with and I raise chickens. So table scraps. I used to always wonder, like, why are the farm fresh eggs so much better than the store-bought eggs? And then the funny thing about the farm fresh eggs, based on my history of knowing how we kept chickens, is they got the table scraps. They got the cuttings. They got everything that was left over that didn't go in the pot or that we didn't completely consume. The chickens got that. And it turned around to be the pass-through for all the nourishment. So as far as like different practices, I think that's one of the practices that I say that we would keep it in, as you mentioned, with the tobacco industry and things like that aren't so good. 9 times out of 10, we just get rid of that stuff.
So one of the biggest industries that we fight in North Carolina is the industrial hog farming industry. And so barbecue is a cultural staple, as we know. In North Carolina barbecue is pulled pork, smoked, cooked long periods of time. But barbecue is an important part of coming together. That has been that practice has been divorced because of this industry that is not just the kind of family farm that we're used to and that Black folks participated in, and just having a few hogs out in the country, but having confined animal feeding operations that have thousands of animals that never see the light of day in enclosed warehouses, and that their waste ends up polluting waterways and neighbors, which are also Black and brown. So we have this problem of having this image of the culture of food, an important piece, and then having over the past, like since the 1970s, this eruption of industrialized hog farming, which has made it a toxin instead of just this beautiful cultural practice. So part of it is to just know the difference between like what is and where your food is actually coming from. Is it coming from a hog industry that is polluting Black and brown people and killing them with toxins coming from so much confined like methane of those hogs and so much of the waste and literally hurting respiratory systems with all of that. So can we actually support Black farmers? Can we support these other folks? Because it's not just like that pork is bad or other things, or that cultural practice that we have and love is wrong, but that there's been an industry that has using that love for an atrocious gain that costs way too much.
You act like a white girl, my cousin said, as he rolled down the window and he was giving me a ride, and he threw his bag of whatever fast food restaurant he went to right out the window. So it's like, no, that's what I'm talking about. So behavior change has got to happen, because all those practices that we may have had, a good party in New Orleans, how do we measure a good party during Mardi Gras when the parades roll? By the amount of trash that's on the streets. How do we get rid of that? Well, it's going to be a while, but what we can do is create some jobs. So if people are like, well, that's really not what we do right around here, but you know what they do want to do? Have some jobs. So if people are working part-time, or if you're a musician and you work gig by gig, if there's a full-time job and community ownership of these kind of factories, people listen, because they want to talk about how they can elevate their households or have work for people coming out of prison. And so how do we get to people? Laughter. So comedy, we get comedians, we get theater groups and all kind. We did this all over for HIV from Angola to Zimbabwe. And I worked a lot with drama groups, especially where, if people are laughing, oh, it's funny. And there's some music and dancing, and then hit them hard with some facts. So meeting people where they are, but also looking at behavior change, small group discussions, so that there's a way to deal with all the issues that we have from violence. Because it's true, people are angry, people are pissed off inside because we've been given a raw deal and our systems are just rank. So how do we change that? We've got to unravel it and then deal around the way and come back and come back and come back and keep doing it. So power on and get your degree, girl.
I think we're kicking that Gary. Sorry. Last one.
I am so excited about this movement. Every single day we get a new opportunity to do something different, to help advance the movement, to help change the paradigm and get rid of the status quo. So we were given the opportunity in the space of this question here and such. How do you change the culture? Well, one way that we're changing the culture that we thought of was through mass media. So we started a radio show in Atlanta, Georgia, on the WAOK called "Why Our Community Must Care About Climate." And we deliberately take on some of those all those cultural norms of driving to the convenience store 2 miles away, of not growing our own food, of not living in inefficient homes and such, and grandma staying up all night and watching the movies, et cetera, et cetera. We talk about that stuff on the radio. We bring in experts and specialists and activists and educators to talk about why our community must care about climate. And we touch a number of different topics. We just did a broadcast on extreme heat, but before then it was workforce, and before then it was clean energy and emerging technologies. Before then it was flooding and disaster management and such. But again, and we've done 11 different shows so far and reached over 1 million people. It's with the specific aim of breaking through those paradigms, of recognizing the culture, but at the same time raising the education bar and the awareness bar and pushing people to action, changing the way in which they manage their households, changing what they eat from a food perspective, changing the way that they use transportation, et cetera, through this series of shows, why our community must care about climate. And we've reached maybe 1.5 to 2 million people so far with our broadcasts.
Amazing. Thank you for your question. We do have time for one more question. One more. Yes.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Carpenter, and I live in a community where military open burning is practiced. This is a very rural community, a very poor community, right beside a historically Black, formerly enslaved population that built their neighborhood after being released from the plantation that this facility is also right across the road from. One of the challenges that we face is that this facility is one of the top employers in our area. And so we start talking about this is a problem, and then everyone comes back with, well, you want to take our jobs. And so obviously it's a really complicated issue with it being part of the military. But I think my question is, this is a long-term effort. This is something that is not going to change overnight. And so part of this work is visualizing what a better future looks like, what a safer future looks like. And part of that is this issue of these jobs, is people's livelihoods. They know often that they are being poisoned, but they feel like they don't have any other options. And so my question is, do you have any words of wisdom or, just thoughts on how to reimagine that future for the people in our area so that we can have a better, safer future, so that they don't get poisoned, they can have a safe job, and they don't lose the rest of their life and the time, spent with their families. We worked with a man in our documentary we recently released, and he died 4 days after we finished filming, and he was only in his 60s, and he left behind a whole family of grandkids, and they'll never get to spend that time with him back. So I just wondered if you had any words of wisdom. Thank you.
I'll be quick. That happens all the time in terms of there's an economic development nugget, and there's screaming job creation. They're screaming wealth disparity mitigation. They're screaming, uplift of the community, and they want to build this big box thing, or they want to do open burning, or they want to do a plant mod to increase production, etc., without taking into account the impacts on the neighboring community and such. Case in point, that down at Hampton Roads, they did just that. They wanted to build this big box thing, a casino, right next door, 1,500 feet away from Grandmama's house. 1,500 feet, okay, and everybody was for this. The city council and the workforce board and the Hampton Roads Planning Commission. Everybody. But then there were some cries of voice from the community, small cries and such, who organize and mobilize and such. And what do we do against this vast inventory of economic development and prowess and such? How dare we push back on jobs? Well, we did. Okay. And what did we do? We got with the NAACP and we created their guideline for projects and policies for community engagement. It's a 100-page guide. Go online and download it. It's for when they want to do stuff like this and how they should be engaging your community. What did we do? We got with a large company called Jacobs from Skanska, and a large construction roundtable and such, and auto case, and develop something called the building EJ tool. And that's when they want to do what? Build this stuff right next to your community, how they should be interfacing with you. What decisions that they should be making, what conversations that should they be having. Lastly, what did we do? We help to advance with what is called cumulative impacts, because all that smoke and gaseous pollutants coming over from this open burden is already going into a environmentally burdened and health challenge and economic challenge community. So in other words, what are the cumulative impacts, of this action, and assessing that, we can push back on the action maybe a bit, have them change their operations, have them change the design of the building, have them change the processes, put in place policies and such. So 3 things there, and happy to talk to you about it afterwards as well.
My answer is gonna be short and simple, but or maybe it might not be, because now I'm thinking about the story. But the short answer is get involved. What do you tell your community? You tell your community, get involved. My short story. 3 years ago, 2020, where everybody kind of experienced this really big global thing. At that point in time, I was not involved. I was still working for a university. I was doing a lot of other things than climate change, climate justice, racial capitalism, fighting against that, all that stuff. I was not involved with anything. That's 3 years ago. Since then, when I got the time to get out of the workforce and actually focus on life and focus on the things around me that I thought was important, I got involved. I got with different organizations, did a TED Talk, traveled across the United States, going from different urban farms, speaking to different people that ran their different farms and what they were doing, been on stages like this, and figured out who the people were, the players were that would help make change to make change. So people in my community wouldn't fall into the situations like you're speaking about within your community. Because I know that happens everywhere. The biggest thing that you can tell, anybody from all ages, if you don't get involved, things will happen around you and you won't realize until it's too late. We were able to make changes there's an organization in our city. Here's a story. Organization in our city, shout out to Jody. He and his partner, Mariah, they have this thing called Beargrass Thunder. Beargrass Thunder worked on policy to change the weed ordinance that we have in the city. People grow tall weeds, and if you're not familiar with these plants, they look like weeds, but they're pollinator gardens. And you need the butterflies, you need the bees, and you need all of that stuff to help with the plants and rah. For the longest time, what was happening in our city was you would get cited for that. And it's like, well, you're going to cite me for trying to encourage good, healthy practices in the city. We are already in a situation where we have a urban heat crisis, where it's almost 10 to 20 degrees hotter in the city than it is in the surrounding areas, because we have so much asphalt. And they've done so much work doing that ordinance that they had the policy changed to where now if you are growing certain plants in your front yard, you don't get cited for it. Now imagine if you get cited, what are they doing? They're taking this money from people, black and brown, disenfranchised, that really don't have the funds to, take care of a citation because they don't want to cut the grass all the time. But now if you find a way to plant, good pollinator gardens in your space, it's okay if you have on the sign that says, hey, under this ordinance, we're allowed to have this here, and I don't have to spend money trying to cut my grass because now I got a pollinator garden here. You see what I'm saying? So it's getting involved. If you don't get the people in your area involved to like help make change to happen around you, and sometimes it's not even for the benefit of everybody.
I think we're gonna kick to Reginald. He's chopping at the bit.
Chemical engineering was started in the 1880s because one business manager said to his boss, the owner of the company in Great Britain, look at all of that smoke going up in the air. He was like, I don't want to hear it again about how, we're polluting. I'm making money. He says, no, that smoke and ash that's going up in the air could be product that you could be making revenue off of. And that changed how manufacturing was done and chemical engineering was born. That said, when I hear open pits that are burning, I'm saying, why don't you close it up, use the energy that's being generated to drive turbines to create electricity at a lower cost than what they're currently paying, capture the CO2 and the steam and then you blend it, you get synthetic fuel, and now you're not putting up stuff in the air, but you can use that syngas another life and reduce the amount of carbon that you're putting out. There's a lot of things that can be done and create new technologies, going back to how entrepreneurship can address environmental justice is that these folks are too short-sighted to see what can be done. The laws of thermodynamics, my scientific friends, cannot be broken, but they can be used. And what I see here is poor judgment, lack of insight, and a business opportunity.
We have time for one more response. So I'm gonna
I think one of the biggest scams, and that we continue to repeat and tell ourselves, is that urban is black and rural is white. Because when we think about, if we also assume that environmental justice is black or a people of color issue, we look for environmental injustices in urban areas, of which there are many. But that leaves exposed sacrifice zones of so many people, of so many areas, of so many legacies that are still left in the dark because we do not see these rural areas as having that power that's happening in silence. What you described, and my condolences to your community member who passed, is an important legacy that we don't tell as a national story. The national story that we say is the North was wonderful. People migrated to the North after slavery. That was where they got their freedom. But people in the South were able to stay and also keep their freedom. They kept their legacies. They kept their families. They found them. They brought them back. People that were sold, they searched for them and made communities together. There is a wonderful, proud legacy of Black rural communities because those were the ones that they were the first started. They continued. And that is a story and something that is worth fighting for, because these industries, military included, would love for them to just die and take their land. And that's happening in so many. That's happening in Mossville, Louisiana. That's happening in Freedom Hill, North Carolina. That's happening where you are too. And that's can happen because we don't think of these areas. We're not thinking of rural areas as important in the environmental justice movement overall, and important for climate change, important for anti-war pieces. We're not thinking about all those things together. So for the folks in your area specifically, people need to know their story in terms of that legacy. Their land is so important, not just for them, but for the nation, to know that people were actually able to stay and have the lives that they needed. They didn't need to just, go north, go somewhere else. That land in particular is important, and they're going to lose it if they do not actually fight the industry that is killing them and see that industry as the that killing agent itself, and not just the thing that's bringing jobs and opportunity. Is bringing an opportunity for a death sentence or more. And so that is a huge challenge, because people don't want, it's the best that they can get, right? We have no other economic opportunity in this rural area. There's no other things coming here. And so to be able to think about how can we train people to come back, young people are leaving and going out, finding something else, going to cities, going to other places. thinking about how we can have strong economic development that does not, again, kill people is the goal, and to try to start believing in that vision there. So that could be, workforce development in schools on a different trade. That could mean thinking about, can we bring solar? Can we bring another industry that is not going to be killing people onto this place, and have opportunities for young people to stay? And so fight that industry through other opportunity as well. Get another story, another vision for that place, and be very proud of that rural community that is still there. But it can only remain if people start to disengage from that single industry that's killing people.
Thank you. Thank you for your great questions. You give these founders a very heightened round of applause. Round of applause for yourselves as well for the great questions. I ask that you all please don't dislike me because of the timekeeping. I know, but we got to keep the train rolling. Blame him, yes. But thank you all again. Special thanks to all of you founders, of course, for being here and doing your work. And special thanks to Dr. Sakobi as well for having us. And we'll be around. I think I had a note to say that the lunch keynote is in the Grand Ballroom. So that just started at 12. So let's continue to connect and push this movement forward. Thank you.